No mistake in that Professor Moshe Idel was invited to speak the first as a keynote speaker for this conference, and he will give us a lecture called From Performance to Experience in Jewish Mysticism, of course with all the expertise that we know that he benefits and he shares with so many other younger scholars in Jewish studies. Professor Moshe Idel from the University of Jerusalem, you are welcome to give the first keynote lecture. Thank you.
I would like to thank very much the organizers, more mature and especially the younger one, for inviting me to give this lecture. For its importance, you will hear in a moment. Reflecting this morning about the situation that such a conference is opened with a more learned lecture about Kabbalah, I came to the following conclusions. One, for sure, it's a personal story. Being born in Romania in a very small shtetl, and knowing a little bit Romanian, I had a protection, a personal protection. The other reflection is that Kabbalah, after all, is important enough today. Without me, since in America and all over the world, people are reading books about Kabbalah. However, what may be more interesting is the fact that Kabbalah has a certain history in Bucharest. I would like to start with some remarks about Kabbalah in Bucharest before inflicting upon you my professional expertise. Hard to believe, but in Bucharest, several books about Kabbalah were at least initiated. One of them written, one of the most profound books of Kabbalah, on Luriani Kabbalah, written in Hebrew in Bucharest by a rabbi. Not studied enough, but that's no doubt a peak in Luriani Kabbalah. Several rabbis serving in Bucharest were deeply interested in Kabbalah. One of them, Moshe Idel, contributed after his leaving Bucharest. Several studies about the beginnings of Kabbalah and Jewish mysticism, including printing of text. The late chief rabbi, Alexander Shafran, wrote many books about Kabbalah. I assume most of them after he left Bucharest. But if you are reading a little bit what happened in Romania during the First World War and in the interbellum period, you will see that was a rather great interest in Kabbalah. Stories about Kabbalah in newspapers, week after week. During the First World War, I don't know how many of you knew about something like that. A very famous figure, Fundoianu, known as Benjamin Fondan, he read a lot about Kabbalah, knowing Hebrew and Yiddish, and reported for several weeks about Kabbalah in Romanian in newspapers. And there are also other examples. Whoever is reading interbellic Romanian literature, like Uri Benador, for example, will find there novels based on Hasidism. Very clear. He had a good knowledge of Hasidism, including some Hebrew and English. But Hasidism is the clue for understanding. Those are facts which can be extracted by reading a little bit here and there. However, there's an history of Kabbalah in Bucharest that never materialized. In late 20s, a famous lecturer at the University of Bucharest, named Ionescu, professor of logic and philosophy, contemplated the idea to leave philosophy and to study Kabbalah. Whoever is going to read his lectures, as printed, will find references to Kabbalah. That's also the case of Moshe Idel. The young Moshe Idel, of the age of 17, he read already some pages of the Zohar and used them in one of the earliest productions he produced in a controversy about the importance of mysticism and occultism. For him, the book of the Zohar presented a pre-Copernican worldview. Those two examples of UNESCO and Eliade demonstrate potentials which didn't materialize. Could you imagine Romanian culture in the 30s if UNESCO and Eliade will continue their studies of Kabbalah and Hebrew? Together with people like Uri Benador or Yom Kaluga, we could have another Romanian culture. I hope a better one. So that's a hidden history of Bucharest with Kabbalah, which was there on the margin. In fact, there's much more material. Groups studying Kabbalah. And who knows who was there in those groups? Since people who left Romania, like Undoian, and like Tzara, and like Marcelianco, I heard Marcelianco saying that he was wine painting Kabbalah. We could have another history of Bucharest, maybe also another history of Kabbalah. So, in any case, Kabbalah was not so alien to Bucharest, so I feel better now that opening this distinguished conference, I'm not just innovating, but maybe returning to a potential development, which in the early 30s was not impossible, but turned to be marginal for the history of Kabbalah and for the history of Romanian culture. So that is the reason why I now feel better that I don't introduce Kabbalah in Bucharest in English for the first time. So let me turn now to the more professional part of my lecture. I would like to discuss a certain aspect of mysticism and exemplify it with examples from Jewish mysticism. And my assumption is as follows. There are many definitions of mysticism. I would like to offer one more, not better, but worse, I hope. Mysticism is an intensification of religious life. Basically, that is what it is. Not heretical, not so extraordinary, but just one attempt to deepen the already existing possibilities of religious life in a much more intense manner. From this point of view, let us look to two major developments in scholarship of Jewish mysticism in our generation. One trend, represented basically by monographs edited by Stephen Katz, assumes that mysticism is constructed socially, culturally, intellectually, religiously, constructed by what happens in the immediate milieu of the mystic.